we kind of stumbled onto this idea that you're the enemy of the demons in the game. And that's very different to every other, kind of action-based game out there where you're, the lone survivor, you're the savior, you're the one who's beating everybody or whatever.
This is Mick Gordon, the genius behind the incredibly punchy and evocative original soundtrack for Doom 2016 and Eternal. His work elevated the games from good to great, and seriously ramped up the intensity, standing out even against its legendary predecessors, with every single song on the track list egging you on to slay more demons and power through the levels in creative, bloody and fluid motions. Now, I wanted to take a look at how I could expand my own Doom experience after falling in love with the potency of the modern Doom gameplay all over again. And although many have tried to encapsulate the rush that the Doom games provide, most have fallen short, with the likes of Rack looking rather tame and the Doom movie from 2005 feeling really flat and uninspired. While some have come close to reimagining the original Doom games, I fear that there isn't really any way to advance to the ultimate immersive modern Doom-like experience. Insatiably, I decided to look at things from a different angle, much like how Mick Gordon created the Doom soundtrack from the point of view of the demons instead of the protagonist, the Doomslayer. Rather than looking, I took a step back and just listened. This was when I heard Dante's guide Virgil echoing through an eternal riff. For this journey to the ultimate Doom experience requires us to venture through all 9 circles of hell, from Dante Alighieri's Inferno. Charon, the ferryman of the underworld, takes us down a river into the first circle of hell. Melancholy oozes out of all the souls present, with a mesmeric and lingering ring of guitars keeping virtuous pagans within their bland, empty cell of a world. This is Limbo. Though the sound of hell is often jarring and distorts into gruesome melody, the sound of Limbo is much lighter, teasing for the torment to come. For as we go deeper into hell, the closer we get to that magnificent, twisted and tortured feeling of Doom. The fruitful reverberations of Pomegranate Tiger and Kadinja echo the halls of Limbo, in what I'm dubbing hypno-metal. A hypnotic undertone lightens up the atmosphere while still alluring to the vicious roar of songs to come, and the synthetic impression from underlying electronica is used to bolster the punch of the guitars. Cursed to an eternity in the midst of a raging rift storm due to giving into their lust, Rammstein's aggressive metal is heard, resonating through the second circle of hell. Even if you don't understand the language, the volume of lustful lyrical allegory and audacious, powerful beats are unparalleled to even the common ear. Along with the lead singer, Till Lindemann's worn Cold War era vocals, taking you through history, making you feel the harsh realities from their old homeland of East Germany. Prominently featuring the Djent style, which will become more familiar as we dig deeper into hell, Rammstein utilise not only physical instruments to hone their sound, but they digitally amplify to produce a unique and artificially saturated aura, allowing for so much more control to create their perfect vision. And with a large portion of their discography alluring to lewd acts and sexual desires, along with the passionate bravado of some of their more controversial work, Rammstein truly are the epitome of lust in musical form. As we venture into the third circle of hell, we find the souls of gluttons lying in an eternal slush, conjured up by an icy rain. Sitting in a row of thrones overlooking the sinners, wielding the chains latched onto the giant beast Cerberus, the Swedish band Meshuggah feast, enjoying a fluid yet merciless Djent beat flowing through every sinner to be seen. With Djent at this level, we've got these 2 layers of sound, battling one another for audible supremacy, yet these somehow complement the final sound, heard by all. The main beat is usually slow to moderately paced and relatively groovy, but a fast double bass pedal that's present underneath along with the loaded drums strengthen the overall tone of the piece, allowing the listener to feel like the track is both fast and exciting, but also steady enough to just chill out to. Meshuggah pioneered the Djent style in the late 80s and early 90s, utilising 7 or even the low-sounding 8-string guitar to produce a progressive and authentically deep, heart-hitting sound. Periphery followed suit with heavy inspirations from Meshuggah, trying to emulate their style whilst adding the flair of modern technology, which I believe has triggered a butterfly effect that led to Mick Gordon's progressive and often liberal use of Djent in his Doom soundtracks. Constant internal joust plagues those of greed, balancing art over capitalistic ventures. Here we discern the sound of Dutch composer Thomas Holkenborg, otherwise known as JunkieXL, the man partially responsible for perhaps the best thing to come out of the Justice League film, that Come Together cover, along with some more sullied work. Despite arguably being a little avaricious and producing some less impactful soundtracks for enormous movie productions, JunkieXL has crafted some outstanding tension-building work, not only in his solo portfolio but for some big films too. The Mad Max Fury Road soundtrack is often subtle, producing distorted synth with a faint touch of industrial grit that builds upon the atmosphere fantastically, being somewhat creepy yet alluring to the ever-growing threat that is Immortan Joe's crew. And when the action comes into play, it's a lot more arrogant with the percussion, and this feels fittingly bombastic. Coveting the spotlight from George Miller's action, it arguably even steals the show at times. Phlegeus, the son of Ares, ferries us down the river Styx into the fifth circle, where we witness perpetual doom within the eyes of the angry and wrathful, fighting amongst one another, with the rays of the dwindling sun and lunar beams striking their backs. Everlasting dusk. The tapestry of synth and grungy metal that is Andrew Hulshult's Dusk is projected out onto the boiling waterways of oblivion, torturing the sullen demons who are stuck there. Hulshult's Dusk almost hits every single beat of the modern Doom soundtrack, having a gritty and harsh synth pounding through the roar of the guitar and percussion. It is no coincidence, for this is the original score for the game by the same name, which has in fact been heavily inspired by the original and Doom 64 in not only visual style, but it attempts to recapture the magic by formulating a similar narrative structure and high-paced gameplay that pairs perfectly with this impactful soundtrack. At the other end of the river, the towering city walls of the inner circle block out most of the light. Vibrations from a synthetic bass burst through the ground, for on the other side of those walls is the graveyard of heretics. Electronica is often deemed heresy by a fair amount of metal fans and creatives alike. However, it frequently crosses over with metal styles, especially with Djent. Even the likes of Skrillex, perhaps the most widely known electronic dubstep artist, collaborated with pioneers of nu metal, Korn, and it's impossible to argue that Mick Gordon's work, especially that of his Doom soundtracks, weren't inspired by some of his electronic contemporaries. Paul Leonard-Morgan's cyber-futuristic work on Dread comes to mind when trying to recapture some of the digital electronica used within Gordon's lighter, more synth-focused tracks. Although not as heavy as some of the other work highlighted here, Leonard-Morgan's sound really captures the futuristic cyberpunk vibe that Dread was going for extremely well, bringing that world to life. Doom, being set in 2149, takes advantage of a similar sound to provoke an almost indistinguishable feeling of transcending the modern day. Within the seventh circle, we see degenerates up on crosses, overlooking murderers and persons of violence boiling away in a pool of blood, or strapped down to the ground, being torn apart by dogs to the beat of Anup Sastry's Lion record, the violent abrasive sounds of the industrial underbelly. Coming extremely close to that Mick Gordon sound we've been looking for, Anup Sastry's entire discography weaves electro and metal, bringing highs and lows that match the intensity of Doom's gameplay so well that you'll just want to keep on chaining these glory kills endlessly. The quadrilogy of album by Sastry immerse your world with fire, gore and flames, rip and tear, the aggression of the hard-hitting percussion, along with the digital pierce of the guitar, bringing you into that perfect state of mind to stand before the devil himself and chainsawing him into a pile of ammunition, ready for the hordes to come. Royalty in our 8th Circle of Hell and composer of the original 1994 Doom soundtrack, Robert Prince, potentially deceived the masses, presenting us with an almost perfect OST to go along with the fast-paced action that we witnessed within the original Doom. However, the inspirations for the tracklist lie heavy in bands such as Metallica, Slayer and Pantera, with some of the most iconic riffs to be heard in hell itself being very similarly present in prior tracks. The ever-iconic E1M1 at Doom's Gate was seriously motivated by Metallica's Master of Puppets and No Remorse, as well as others, along with Map 18 sounding very reminiscent of Pantera's This Love. Is the similarity a problem? At the end of the day, not really. They fit majestically into the rip and tear aesthetic of the original, and the 16-bit composition was done incredibly well by Prince. Although never explicitly stated he repurposed these tracks, Prince has apparently affirmed most of his inspiration came from Tom Hall's Doom Bible, along with his own metal tastes that were slightly guided by co-founder of id Software John Romero, who was a notable fan of the likes of Black Sabbath, Pantera, Metallica, and of course, Slayer. Mixing that incredible audio aesthetic from the 80s and 90s that were present in the original Doom soundtrack with some of the more modern trends and tools that we've touched upon on this journey. Mick Gordon, at the centre of hell itself, created perhaps the best video game soundtrack that I've ever heard, utilising a synthesizer that he couldn't fully understand from the Soviet era, and a deep-sounding 9-string guitar. Gordon smashed together multiple subcultures of metal and electronica to produce a true sound of hell, with the tinny screeches representing the squeals that you'd expect from the demons when the Doomslayer enters the room. High-octane action on screen and flowing through your entire body via a perfect balance of visual and audio exposure. Mick Gordon's Doom soundtracks are truly a feast for the senses. I started this endeavour to try and find the ultimate Doom listening experience, and although we've come full circle to Mick Gordon himself, who must have done a deal with the devil to compose such magnificence, I feel that we've touched upon some hard-hitting tracks that feel familiar enough to slide into your Doom playlist, also adding their own unique spice to keep things interesting. I started thinking about this concept of expanding my metal horizons upon re-listening the Doom OST after Doom Eternal was announced back in 2018, and I felt like sharing my findings and favourites with you all, as they're all certainly worth a listen. Thank you very much for watching, and I'd also like to thank all of the artists mentioned for creating these tracks that both entertained me and impacted my Doom experience in some way, and I recommend that you do give them all a little check out, which there will be a playlist of all the songs that I mentioned or all of the songs that sort of impacted my decision, a shortlist so to speak, of all of the best tracks that impacted my Doom experience whilst listening. Anyway, my name is Andrew or Stanley111, make sure to drop a like, drop a comment and subscribe if you've not done so already, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye bye.